Welcome to another edition of the Not So Quiet Period. My name is Lauren Boyer. I'm your host, and I'm wearing my Philly shirt today. They got a big win against the Mets this afternoon, and they've been struggling against the Mets. They've been struggling so far for the most part this season, but they've got a couple wins in the last couple of games, so I thought I'd support them. Anyway, this edition, I'm going to be discussing concussions in college football. Now, I realize that concussions can happen any level, male, female, any sport. But I think just to generate a little bit more comments, I think college football, there's a little bit more coverage of that other than the NFL. So that's what I'm primarily focusing on. Even though the Not So Quiet period is primarily focused on college athletics, I'm going to start out by talking about a lawsuit in the NFL. 75 former NFL players are suing the NFL, claiming the league intentionally withheld knowledge of the damaging effects of concussions. Now, it's kind of a hard thing to determine, I think, because I can't imagine anyone wanting to put players in danger like that by withholding this information about how serious this injury is. But then again, a lot of money involved in the NFL and professional sports, especially with some individual players. So, maybe there is a possibility that the NFL knew and they weren't going to let their top revenue generating athletes sit out because of these head injuries. So, like I said, it's kind of a tricky thing, but I thought this would be a good lawsuit to follow over the next couple of years. Some of the big NFL players in this lawsuit include Pro Bowlers Mark Duper of the Miami Dolphins, Rodney Hampton of the New York Giants, and former Super Bowl MVP Otis Anderson. Basically, what they're stating is that the NFL knew how dangerous concussions could be long term and did nothing until just recently. We're starting to see more rules being in place about hitting, and they're starting to warn the players of this serious injury. Uh, NFL players, they're suffering from these head injuries, and the NFL is trying to make sure that they're making the right adjustments to help alleviate the injuries. It doesn't just stop there, though. Football players in the NCAA and even high school are also recording deaths in large numbers because of these brain injuries. In fact, there are 300,000 sports-related traumatic brain injuries that occur each year. I mean, that's a huge number. The scary part is that these severe head injuries can lead to permanent brain damage or even worse. I mean, we're seeing some serious cases in the NFL after these NFL players are done playing and they're having difficulty adjusting to life because their brain just isn't right. And we're seeing some of these cases come out a little bit more. And basically, what's causing this is what's called traumatic brain injury, or TBI. That is the leading cause of death in sports-related accidents. Now, one of the main reasons college athletes, especially the football players, are seeing more of these TBI injuries is because of the pressure to perform, to win, and to keep their scholarships. The same is true for the NFL. They have to, in order to be paid, they have to perform at a high level. They have to play every game. In most cases, they have to play every game. And some of these brain injuries, some of these concussions can be season ending, can be career ending. And in the college aspect, these players are receiving a scholarship to attend school to play football. And, whether they stay there all 4 years or they leave early, it's still, the pressure is there to keep these scholarships and to keep a roster spot. The rosters for college football are actually relatively large, but if you're not performing according to the coach's standards, or you're injured all the time, it's very easy, especially in college, to be replaced. I mean, you have a bad year where you're injured all the time. These coaches can go out and recruit players who want to play in college, who are playing at that same high level, who want a scholarship. So it's a little scary that this all goes through a college football player's mind when they're getting checked for as serious of an issue as concussions. And they're withholding their symptoms from these trainers because of this pressure, and which is even worse because they return to competition too soon. And then we see what's called the second impact syndrome, which again, I'm not a doctor, obviously, I have no medical background, but just from doing my research, these are the main issues that have been talked about in many of the articles that I've read. So this second impact syndrome basically is brain swelling that occurs after an athlete has suffered a second concussion. And that's before the first concussion has fully healed. So they're returning to competition too early after a first concussion, and then this is where the second impact syndrome takes place if they receive another concussion. And this is the part of a concussion that can become fatal. And it's what many of these college athletes don't understand about concussions. They think if they get one, they take a couple of weeks off or whatever, they're good. That's not the case. You get injured like this, there's always chance of re-injuring yourself. In this case, it's your brain. This is the second impact syndrome can lead to the TBI, which can lead to brain cells, killing brain cells, brain damage, permanent brain damage, or this is what's leading to deaths of these athletes after, long-term effects. Even with the testing done on the field, the pressure is still there of these athletes. Now, I found a couple of interesting cases of college athletes who have realized the danger of these concussions. Nolan Brewster played at University of Texas. Now, Brewster decided to quit football with concussions. He started suffering from post-traumatic migraine headaches. His former teammate, Trey Newton, who also quit playing the same team, University of Texas, quit playing football for the same reasons, for the concussion and the headaches. Now, the recommendation came from their trainers after multiple tests, only a couple games into the season, especially for Brewster. So it's not an easy decision to make, but he saw the danger that was happening because of these concussions. So now that we kind of understand the concussions and why they're happening, why the athletes are withholding the information, what is the NCAA doing about it? What are they doing to try to eliminate the number of athletes being affected by this second impact syndrome? There's theories that have come out. There's new equipment, better approach to handling a college athlete who has suffered a concussion immediately on the field during play. But the doctors and trainers, like I've said before, they can only do so much. It's the athletes who need to realize how dangerous this injury is, and they need to report the symptoms. But what the NCAA is doing is, I found two attempts that they're trying to make, and one is that they've teamed up with the Center of Disease Control, the CDC, and basically they're providing institutions with educational resources on the NCAA websites. Now, in a way, when I first saw this, I was like, okay, so you just go on and you read. But actually, it breaks down. It tells you how dangerous they are to a student, how dangerous it is to a coach, to a parent, to the trainers. So this is a first step in educating. And, we kind of said that before. These athletes need to know how dangerous this injury is. And that's, a big problem that the trainers and doctors are having. The second attempt the NCAA has taken is they provided $400,000 to a group of researchers to study the effects of head injuries in both contact and non-contact sports. So we're talking about football, but gymnastics. They're seeing a huge jump in concussions in female athletes, well, male athletes too, in gymnastics. So basically, they're tracking these athletes over after their career has ended. The research is called the National Sport Concussion Outcomes Study Consortium, and will be researchers from Michigan, University of Michigan, UCLA, and University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. But so the plan of the NCAA is to track the athletes after their college career ends, examine the long-term effects of head injuries, and then their goal of this research is to gain a more comprehensive understanding about traumatic brain injury, the TBI, which causes the death, the permanent brain damage, and the killing of brain cells. And what they're hoping from this study is they will be able to have a better control over those long-term effects by preventing the serious concussions after first-time impact. So they seem to think that they have the injury, the initial impact when an athlete gets that first concussion. So now their idea is to study these long-term effects and try and prevent these deaths from occurring after athletes are done playing in their 4 years of career, however long they play. So hopefully, with this research, they can make that step and prevent some of these. I mean, the NFL players who are killing themselves, some, whether it's because of the concussions that they had while they played, or they just can't handle, life. It's still up in the air, but we're seeing the brain research on these athletes, and even there's some cases in college that these athletes are harming themselves because they're not right in the head, and it's because they've been hit so often. I mean, there's been other attempts, like changes in the way the helmets protect the head, initial impact with helmet to helmet. So there have been a lot more attempts, but I think, with the NCAA, this is one of the attempts that seems to make the most sense with this long-term study. So hopefully they can come up with something that saves some of these athletes. So that's it for the discussion on concussions. Tune in for another edition of the Not So Quiet Period.